Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Property Hustler Show. My name is Andrew, and today Ping and I have Empower Investments, Miss Trang here, who is a new up-and-coming Canadian real estate investor. She's coming up very quickly, and she is a very savvy businesswoman who is specializing in the burst strategy combined with STRs, and she is going into Airbnb arbitrage in the States. She has a lot of great things to share with us. So, Trang, great to have you on the show.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It was Andrew. I was like, this guy's good. Yeah, I started following you, and then I joined your group.
Nice.
And that's when I first started, like literally last year, September.
That's crazy.
That's amazing.
I remember that we talked about the Airbnb stuff, right? Like just look into it. And it was just a couple like text message, and then you were taking a lot of like good action.
I was starting out, I was like really hungry. I was like, I need to do something. And then I was on Facebook, and then I saw you guys. And I remember talking to Ping. I was like posting a question. This is like when I first started. I have a screenshot of our conversation mid-September. I asked you about something and you guys were so forthcoming. It's just that like authenticity that I can feel across, you know what I mean? Like I can be like, these guys are genuine. Like you actually took the time to answer my questions, adding value, not just like, like just fluffing it and just glazing the idea. So as a new investor, like it really resonated with me. It's just like one moment changed your trajectory. And I felt like that was one moment.
I appreciate the compliment.
It's true.
Honestly, by the way,
because I literally just saw the question, I replied it, but that's awesome.
No, but that's also when did you message other people?
I did.
Yeah.
I was on a rampage to interview investors.
Okay.
Because I was really hungry. So I think it was the one moment that stuck because I was part of your group and you guys took the time to add value. As someone, I'm like, I'm nobody. I feel so intimidated, right? And I see you guys making moves. Small ideas like that, like the little thing, like it resonated with me because you were one of the first, like very authentic person that I was like, oh, I can do this.
Well, you also asked a good question.
I don't remember. I think it was Airbnb.
Yeah, you were asking about like, what should I do? Like, how do I actually turn my rental property into Airbnb, right? Because I remember you were having a little concern about the proof of concept, and I'm just like, why don't you just go into other platform? Go into Airbnb platform, look at other listings, and see what the occupancy rate is.
Yeah.
And I remember you came back like I think 1 or 2 days. You were like, hey,
I'm booked up.
Yeah, like no, like we're gonna do this because it sounds like it's gonna work.
Yeah, and then so then I kept following you guys, and I'm like, I remember that time where you made a difference in my journey, and it was very early on.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
That is extremely warming because that is actually the goal here. And honestly, it's not that any of the stuff is like a tremendous sweat off our back. It is just information, and when we look back at it, we wish we had access to information that would prevent us from some serious scrapes and bruises, right? And it will also speed things up, right? And it's just it is very warming to know that that was helpful and helped you make your own moves.
For sure.
It is really
good.
You say you only started last year. What made you want to get into real estate? Like, did you spend a lot of time researching before you take action, or?
I'm a little bit more of a risk taker. So I've always been very creative in my entire life, and my background is in business. So I've worked in different capacities of like multi-million-dollar programs for Walmart, Costco, and all those. So I've already been in the business world, so I love the entrepreneurship. My parents came from humble beginnings, so they are immigrants, and they were sort of in survival mode when they had to leave Vietnam. So we were like refugees. So we sailed like 30 days across the ocean.
Sailed,
literally in a wrecked up boat.
Wow.
I was 5 years old, so I remember everything. It was very vivid. And we went to Hong Kong because they were accepting refugees, and we had to stay there for 2 years, and then we got to pick the country that we got to go to amongst one of the best countries in the world, like Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland. So we picked Canada.
What year was this?
This is 1990.
1990. Okay, crazy.
So that's how we came here as refugees, because my parents were essentially in survival mode. So their priority is to just work 3 jobs. So the concept of like financial literacy or educating us or leading us in terms of like education was not there because they were in survival mode. They were just trying to put food on the table and, pay rent. So for me, I grew up in Jane and Finch. If you know Jane and Finch.
We know Jane and Finch. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I grew up in Jane and Finch, and it was more like, hey, fend for yourself. We got to go work. So I spent most of my childhood just independently playing in the yards on my own. And, walking home, you would see police and SWAT team and dogs at night.
Yeah.
and you would hear gunshots. You're like, oh, okay, just another day in the neighborhood. You would just keep walking as a kid because you're like, this is normal. This is how life is. So you don't really know any different. So because there was so much, growing up in that kind of environment, there's a lot of bad influence, right? So it's either skipping school or not going to school or like going to raves. So, I was pretty much a high school dropout because, being in that environment, it's very difficult to have, good influence, right? So I just wanted people to understand that like you can come from humble beginnings and have your life map out for you. It's not predetermined just because of where you come from and who you are. It's just like what you make of it in that moment. And if you really want it, you can. So kind of like that's where I am.
What makes you want it though? Because obviously, like growing up in that kind of environment, you say you have a lot of more negative influence on you.
Yeah.
But what makes you realize that, hey, this is not a life I want. I want to like make an impact and really go into a different direction.
After graduating from college, I went back to college. And just to going to Vietnam for 2 months and going back to my roots and realizing that like life is hard, it's not easy. And just realizing that what my parents did to give me the opportunity for a better life. So they pretty much sacrificed their lives, picked up and left with the clothes on their backs, left the country, flee the country. 1-year-old kid, 5 years old and 10 years old. And my dad and my mom were just like literally crawling through the bushes. If they catch you, you're going to pretty much get murdered or put in jail. Or while you're sailing in the ocean, they can rob you or just kill you. Or because of the storm, you can drown. So they gave their sacrifice to give us a better future. So when I came here, my dad always taught me, he's like, listen, Canada is a land of opportunities. The worst that could happen, you're not going to be homeless. I'm like, what do you mean, Dad? He's like, there's a program where you can be on welfare or support from the government. So that's the worst case scenario. So pursue your dreams. If that is the worst and if that is the bottom in Canada, that means your world is full of endless possibilities to chase your dreams. So do you know what I mean?
This is so powerful.
My dad told me that and I was like, oh, if that's the worst, then I can do anything. I can just push the boundaries. So that's the kind of mindset I grew up to. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to chase that dream. I'm going to be creative. I'm going to like not say no to opportunities. So that's kind of like,
You see it as a platform that you can use to propel yourself. Some people see this as a comfort cushion, and they squander the opportunity. And honestly, that story, I feel like some people like to talk about how challenging their situations are. Like that is a challenging situation that you just described, and I feel that people don't have stories like that. Like it would be challenging to relate the perspective. Because that is a very unique perspective. And then even though you said you grew up in Jane and Finch, which by the way, that's why she's not afraid of risk, right? Because you kind
I had to fight. I have to learn how to fight.
Yeah, you got a little something in you. You can take two people and say, oh yeah, what is the reason why you're in the situation you're in, whether it's successful or whether it's not. Somebody might say, well, I grew up in Jane and Finch. I had a lot of negative influences around me, and that is why I'm unsuccessful. But you're here with the story saying, yeah, I had a lot of negative influences around me, and I took control of my life, and I have success stories to share today. So really, what is the difference? I don't think people sometimes make excuses of their environment.
Yeah,
but
victim mentality, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because, it's like you have a 50-50 chance of choosing the right path for you or the other path, right? So you have control over that, your future and your trajectory.
Next time when people complain about Canada, like living in Canada, I'm going to be sending this podcast over to them.
Be like, there you go.
Yeah.
People literally come here, would come here on a sailboat to for a better life.
It was a
right?
wrecked up boat. Like it's
wow.
This is why immigrants actually they do so well, because I think there's perspective. And I think that's often it. It is perspective that they have where they do not fall into the victim mentality, right? I know some people even in some neighborhoods here. There's a guy. He was from where's he? I think he was from Nigeria, and there was a PTA meeting, and then the parents were complaining about the state of the neighborhood. This guy comes in, and he's just like, "What do you mean? This is a nice neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
In my neighborhood, you have to worry about animals that might attack you and kill you.
Yeah,
and you're worried about like
different perception.
Yeah, and because there's sometimes like a couple homeless people that they're worried about. It's a big deal.
Yeah,
it's okay to have standards, but still be a little bit more proactive than to just victimize yourself. And I think like your story is like a testament to that.
Yeah. So I think to sum it up, I want to ensure that my parents' sacrifice does not go unnoticed. So for me to be in real estate is sort of like they were in survival mode and they came here being just in a very distressed survival mode to kind of like give us a chance for a better life. For me, I'm trying to build and thrive. So in order for me to do that, I think real estate is an avenue for me to thrive, kind of like saying to my parents, like, thank you for the opportunity that you've sacrificed for me. And I'm thriving in this environment. And I think real estate is a perfect example for me to do that. And then passing it on to my daughter. I know you have a daughter. Congratulations. So cute. And she will sustain what I've built for her. So it's sort of creating that connection between past, present, and future. So I think that to me is a profound reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. Aside from me loving the entrepreneurship, like having the ability to be comfortable living in the gray and taking risk, I just love the whole dynamic of it. But I think it's sort of like holistically creates a all-encompassing goal in life where it's like, okay, past, present, and future. So it's almost like all-encompassing. You do know what I mean? So it's like I love what I do. But I also know that there's a reason and a why behind it, and it's stronger than just like making money and making a profit. You know what I mean?
Right. Question. The moment that you started having an idea of investing in real estate or you using real estate as a vehicle, what kind of actions did you take to really push yourself out there and start acquiring your very first property?
The first action that I took was actually resulting in a more of a I guess a push factor, whereas I had gone through a separation and, you know, I had to buy my partner out. And I was like, I knew in my mind that once my mortgage was up for renewal, I wanted to invest because I wanted to grow my wealth. I didn't know how. I just wanted to do it. So I had leveraged the equity from my primary residence and I put it to my first property. I didn't know what I was doing really.
And when was that?
August 2022, like last year.
Wow.
So I closed on my first property in August 2022. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, okay, well, initially it was pre-construction because, you know, pre-construction was really hot. Everyone was like making crazy money. And I was like, well, now that the market shifted and the interest rate started increasing, I was like, why would I pay $600,000 for a bachelor or one bedroom condo? And it's going to apparently negative cash flow. I didn't even know what that meant, but I would be carrying the expenses. So it's like, I need to have something that carries itself. So I ended up buying a detached home 10 minutes from where I live, which is in Clarington. And it was like a huge lot, 165 by very narrow, but there's a lot of huge opportunity because it was basically the lowest price detached home in the area, same price as a condo. And I had bought that. I have no idea what I was doing. So I got a tenant in. Somehow I went back to my mortgage broker. I'm like, okay, so what do I do now? Like, he's like, you can keep buying. I'm like, what do you mean I can keep buying? This is the thing. He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, let me go shopping. So I was like, okay. So then I started, that's when my interview started. I was like, okay, going online, seeing all these people owning thousands and hundreds of units. I'm like, how the heck did they do that, right? So I was like, I don't care. I'm determined. I want to learn. I want to grow. So that's when you guys were one of the first ones. So I had interviewed a couple investors. Some have been doing it for like 20, 30 years. And so I remember sitting down with this one guy. He had been an investor for like 25 years. He's tried every single strategy and he's a forensics accountant. So he was telling me all these loopholes of infinite banking. And I was like, what are you talking about? This guy sounds like a fraudster. He's like, I've owned many businesses, property management, student rental. I've built, I'm blah, blah, blah. I'm like, wow, this guy's a fraudster. So I just completely ignored him. I'm like, no, this guy sounds too good to be true. What is he talking about, right? I had stumbled up on this one investor and he was like, I have 3 properties under contract with literally, I think it was a week after I talked to you. He's like, I have 3 properties under contract. Who wants to join? I'm like, I guess me. Like, I just want to learn. Then I came back to you guys and said, hey guys, I'm about to go to a joint venture. What do I do? I remember you guys responding. I think it was Andrew, you. And then when I interviewed this person, there was a sense of like, you know, when you say you want to go with your intuition, it was like intuition, right? I was like, there was a sense of like a genuineness, like the same thing I felt with you. I was like, this person seems very genuine. Like I can trust them. What really stuck out to me and resonated with me is his stories. Like people can say I have thousands of units. I'm like, I don't really care. But like the way he said, he showed me with actions. Like there was a problem with the tenant and the property, but I was relentless and I wanted to solve the problem. And I went there and I did this, and then I came out on the other side. And the result was that it was successful. I was like, ding, 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 ding. And that was the one thing, is like he showed me with actions, right? And it kind of showed me his character of like, okay, put under pressure, this guy can solve these kind of problems. I was like, perfect, check mark. The second one was obviously because he is a contractor and property manager. So I was like, perfect, I hate those part. He can do perfect. So that was like another check mark. The third criteria was his ability to influence. So having a business background, we were trained to influence. So what that means is like you have a 360-degree sort of evaluation on who you are, how you present yourself, and how you can influence an idea. So I worked for TJX, Marshall's Home Stands Winners, in the head office. So because they were off-price business model, when you go to the sellers, like the vendors, you have to negotiate, but you want to negotiate a very cheap price because you're off-price. You're not Walmart. You're not Costco. So how do you win people over? It's with your personality, right? So we were trained to influence. Whether you're talking to someone in the elevator, you have to influence their idea, or you're speaking to a VP, or you're speaking to a coworker. As soon as you know how to influence somebody and make them like you, like naturally like you, then they can essentially be easy to kind of like either succeed as a team, or you kind of like have a leverage in terms of like what they can do for you, right? So I kind of knew this skill was very important in business and in sales. So I transferred those skills to real estate, which is another business. And I saw that skill in him. And the fact that he told me that he was able to work these relationships with these landlords directly, cultivating that relationship for us to get deals, I was like, ding, 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 ding. So I was like, wow, okay, check, check, check. So then I'm like, all right, cool. So let's just go for it. But one condition, he's like, what? It's like, you have to teach me everything. I'm like, I'm hungry to learn. He's like, yep, no problem. So we went on our first burr together. So I'm like, I don't know you, but I have a good instinct about you. Here's $200,000. I threw it at him. I was like, here you go. Boom. This is the risk taker in me, right?
Yeah.
I was like, here you go. Here's some money, whatever.
Were you on title, or are you on title
I was
for
on
this
title.
one? Okay, so that's
Because your interest is protected.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm a title. I didn't know what I was doing because remember I was freaking out and I was like, Ping, Andrew, what do I do? Blah, blah. And you guys were kind of helping me out. I was like, okay, perfect. So that's when like literally after that, I jumped on, and then the burr was very successful. We had bought it for $180K, and I had put down payment, and we couldn't close because it was during December when interest rates were going crazy, and it was a tertiary market. So therefore the banks were all pulling back. They're like, no, no, no. And then at the end of the day, they're like, whoa, it's Cornwall. Everything is so scary right now. We're going to not fund you. So I was like, all right, fine. I'll pay cash. It was the leverage from my house, right?
So you were very under leveraged. So obviously you had these resources to pull on.
Yeah. So the thing is, like when I closed, I have my primary residence. I leveraged to get a second property. And then after I closed on the second property, the bank is like, oh, you still have more room. So here's another. Because remember, I appraised at the peak, right? As soon as the dip went, I was able to buy. So I still had more equity built in.
I see.
Refinance at the peak. Then things pivoted and I got a discount on the first property by $100K. And then I still had more room. So upon closing, the bank was like, oh, here's unsecured $50,000. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll take it. Thanks. Right? So it's like, oh, I have more money. What do I do? So then that's when I bought my third property. So I kind of already recycled that money in like a span of like a month or so.
Nice.
Yeah. So the third property is with the joint venture partner. So it was a lipstick reno. It was already like equity on the buy.
A separate partner, right? This is a different guy.
The first partner ever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah, I know this part's like really confusing, but yeah, the first partner ever. So I had bought it equity on the buy, and then we burred it. It was like 1 month reno, just lipstick reno. And then we refinanced right away. And remember, I had bought it with a HELOC at the time because the banks were all saying no. And so that's why we were able to refinance within like 2 months. So I pulled all my money out after 2 months. And then I ran it as an Airbnb. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. So I literally got my capital back in like 2 months. And then it's just profiting on Airbnb. So I was,
So the third property that you bought was you bought it cash. So when you say you refi, you just get a bank to appraise it, get some capital back, and then so that you can pay off your HELOC.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and when you said you got your capital back, was this like a full burr?
yeah, it was full burr.
You got a full burr successfully. That's impressive.
My first burr, I got a full burr and it was cash flowing. So let's just put it into perspective. So like long-term rents, I probably get like 1,800, but I've been doing Airbnb for the last 8 months and it was doing anywhere on average like 4,500.
That's
So,
awesome.
so my mortgage is like 1,100 and the cash flow is insane. I was like, oh my God, like why would I be doing long-term tenants? So now that's why I'm like, ooh, bursters. I'm loving the bursters.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. And then now you're also working on some what do you call that? The condo Airbnb in Florida, right?
So I had a developer relationship early on in my journey with my mortgage broker, who's also an investor, and he was going heavy in Florida. He has connections there, contacts there. So we were working on a deal where in Florida is essentially like utilizing creative financing, right? So we were working on a 9 portfolio buy, 9 condos in Orlando. And they would just be strictly grandfathered in Airbnb. So how we would crunch the numbers is like essentially having zero money down for down payment. So we would have primary lender in first and then the seller in second position as a VTB. So that way we would have pretty much 0% down. But then that would, always want to ensure that it's cash flows even with like a 0% down.
Wait, so how many condos have you guys closed in?
Well, we were supposed to close on 9, but I guess it didn't fall through. So we're still pursuing other deals, but that one was one of those things where the seller
Oh, I see.
was kind of like, had cold feet last minute. So
I see. Having
Yeah.
second thoughts.
exactly.
I
yeah.
see.
A lot of people who are investing in Canada start to see certain limitations as to
Mhm.
how much they can stretch or how much they can expand. And when you're looking at Florida, I'm assuming the numbers just seem a lot more appealing. And when you're talking about creative financing, I know creative financing in the States versus creative financing here in the States, they're very creative.
Very creative. They
with
just
the
give up
things
free
that they
money.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you want money? Here you go.
If you can rationalize something, they're just like, yeah, okay, this is creative, and yes, we'll do this, right?
Yeah.
It's a very financially focused industry. But how would you compare that to the stuff that you're doing here?
So I know my numbers here. I mean, in a tertiary market, primarily Cornwall, I know my numbers, right? And then I'm taking the same kind of numbers and formulation and applying it to Florida. I'm like, the value is just so much greater and the margin so much greater, especially if you can get in with creative financing, like 0% down. It's almost like you're doing the burr without burring and you're skipping the burr and you're already at the end with the 0% down. Do you know what I mean? So you're kind of skipping all that. And then you're buying the places furnished. So that way it's like you're saving, $10,000 or more to $20,000 on furniture. So then you're really getting your capital back a lot faster. But the only challenge we saw was like still, as much as like the creative finances in the US is a lot more robust than options available, it's still very challenging as a Canadian trying to, penetrate into the US just because, you don't have that equivalent SIN number. There's no sort of credit history. So it's like building that up is sort of like a process in itself, right?
So what's your plan right now for that one? Like, are you still thinking about doing the joint venture first, or are you thinking to actually acquire one property, like go through the process?
For Florida?
Yeah.
Right now, I think that initial 9 condos was actually my first money partner because I was like, what am I doing? Yeah, so right now I think I'm more interested in the arbitrage business.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Why? I feel like in the market I am at now for the burr strategy, we can still burr and we can still profit. Like we can double the value, and I have the Airbnb market down, packed. But for me, I think I want to grow my active income, as we all do. But I think I can see more of a STR, short-term rental, being more of a feasible option to kind of like realistically get myself there at a faster pace. Because I think if you invest in arbitrage in the US, like some people can get their money back within 2 to 3 months. 6 months. So it's a lot quicker. And then you can start, getting your returns so much quicker.
The biggest issue right now is that you're really taking a loan out, and the loan right now is expensive. It's like 7 or 8%, or depending on like where you are and what kind of lender that you're getting.
Yeah.
So the moment that you're getting that money back, that money is costing you money unless you're putting it right into another income producing asset.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why we've been advising a lot of people around us that be careful with the burst strategy. Unless your buying price is extremely low, or a situation like yours where you kind of go in there all cash with a, let's say, HELOC, which the interest rate might even be higher. So it makes sense to actually refi, pay that out, so that your interest, you actually save on maybe 1 or 2% interest by doing this process. Yeah. But my concern, not like concern, but it's just different strategy. Airbnb strategy, the biggest problem that I'm seeing, and I just want to like kind of make a sort of remind everybody, is that if you find a location, a property, and a Airbnb like a STR makes sense, the moment that option is no longer there, we just also need to calculate the risk tolerance that we have to see if the long-term rental can actually still cover that. Because some people, especially in, let's say, Toronto or even in Hamilton right now, with the rule and regulation changes, sometimes they were like, oh my God, like all of a sudden we're out of option. Now we're in negative cash flow for $1,000 per month.
Yeah. And actually, and this is where I think what you're doing is actually very intelligent, because you're creating, I don't know how intentionally it is, because you're saying some things like, I'm just going with the flow almost. Yeah. But you're creating a very synergistic apparatus. And what I mean by a synergistic apparatus, it sounds fancy,
sounds
but really,
fancy.
no, but it's true, because you have a focus, you figured out a niche, you figured out something that's working for you, and even by looking into Florida, you actually are moving to operate in a market that isn't clamping down on what you have found works here. Because right now, I think the concern that Ping is mentioning, and he's right, for people wanting to do short-term rentals in Canada, is that Canada seems to be on a trajectory that they just want to clamp down on it more and more and more and more, and make it more and more difficult. And while the going is good, go. But you just have to keep it in the back of your mind that this might not continue, just depending on how things go. We don't know. Yeah. But you just have to keep that in mind. If you do refinance and you're pulling out income or you're pulling out some money that is going to cost you, if you invest it into what you're describing in arbitrage, that's real estate business. That's not real estate. Like, you want to do real estate investing, and you want to do real estate business, because there's money in real estate, but it's not only in the investment, it's in the services that go along with it. So arbitrage synergizes with what you're already doing. You understand the market. And if you put it there, you can make more money than the interest is costing you. Yeah.
So like, I love that you brought out like the difference between what you're borrowing it. So if I'm going into a deal, let's just say a BRRRR deal. Right now we're working on a currently 6plex. We're about to close at November 30th.
Nice.
So we got it for 62,000 per unit.
Wow, that's really good.
So ARV is like at least double, being conservatively. So that's why we have so much room. Let's just say we're doing like 40 cents on the dollar. There's more than enough room, even if you pay 10% interest or whatever it is, like on your high interest. We built that in as a first and a second. We break it down based on the numbers. Like, let's just say this is like 15% and this is thing, and it still works. So what we do is we buy shitholes, for lack of a better word. We buy shitholes, and then we obviously, BRRRR it and stabilize it with the tenants. And then, we don't crunch our numbers based on STRs, short-term rental, because that's very unpredictable. Like you mentioned, the risk is so high, you don't know where the regulations are going. So it's to err on the side of conservative and being more strategic. We only crunch on long-term numbers, and then anything above and beyond is golden. Right. So let's just say you're borrowing money at like whatever, like, I don't know, crazy, like 15% right now on like a HELOC or something, or like 12 to 15.
Is that what they are? They're not for HELOC?
It depends, like A lender or B lender. Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to get some HELOC out right now. So I was like, oh my God. So for me, it's like, okay, right now prices are down, right? So you kind of like weigh out all the whole holistic picture. Okay, yeah, it's expensive, but if I can get a deal that offsets and still gives me a safe margin to do my rentals and everything else and carrying costs, then yes, I might be making 10% less margin, but the opportunity cost of me not going for this deal and waiting 1 or 2 years, then the market is already chasing and being ahead. I think about those things as well. Be like, hey, this is so expensive. The money is so expensive. But if I can get a deal that's steep enough to compensate for that, and then layer it on with short-term rental, then I'm like, boom, boom, boom. So it's like deal going in, and then obviously having a contractor as a partner, like I'm sure you guys are very good at like renovations as well. It also helps to like save costs because he's basically the GC. So we a la carte the services and we pay for cheap labor. And then on top of that, so you're already saving 1, 2, and then you're saving on finding the deal. And then you're forcing the appreciation and the markets are so strong. And then you're tripling down with short-term rental. So then I'm like, okay, yeah, it's expensive for me to get this money, but look at all the other ways that I'm adding value and like, you know, making that money work. Because if I don't do that, then that money is sitting in there and it's there to use. Why not use it? So for me, I'm thinking about opportunity costs.
Yeah.
So if I do this now, the return may be, it could be 50, but now I'm getting, let's just say 30, that's 20% less. But if I give up on the opportunity and I leave that money in the bank 2-3 years from now, the market has already appreciated. So I could have been investing that money and ensuring I'm doing everything I can to offset that expensive money that I'm loaning. Do you know what I mean? So as a product manager, I have to think about the entire project, like the entire A to Z. Like one action will impact every other action. So you can't really make decisions in silo. You have to collectively say, yes, it's bad here, but here it's going to be amazing. And then you kind of look at the blended profitability and margin and say, this project is boom, 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 boom. It's good.
Yeah,
right?
I love it. By the way, I do want to point out something. You're talking about 2 or 3 different strategies in what you just mentioned here. And I think that's actually what separates you from a lot of a beginner investor, where they only try to stick to one strategy first. But the truth is that one strategy in different real estate market may not actually work. So you're kind of using Airbnb to create that kind of cash flow to compensate with a 10% of or 8% of interest that you need to kind of cover. And then on top of that, you're analyzing or you're also scouting out a deal that's way cheaper than the current market value. So that one, a long-term strategy can actually fit in. So yeah, no, I love the mixture of different strategies.
So I call it a la carte. So we kind of go to a restaurant and be like, I'm going to pick the best of the best, right? So I'm going to like, I don't want that. I want this. And then collectively, it's like the best of the best of the best. And that's what I'm really about, right? So that's why I like to try. I know you guys talk about like a diversification a lot. I love your business model, how you have like property management, you have like flipping, you have like long-term, that's, to me, it's amazing, right? So I think I love that aspect. So to me, is like diversification is so important, especially in this market. And especially when it comes to business, the ability to be agile and pivot is critical.
Important.
Because
So
in the day,
important.
because you know what I do, I've done drop shipping, I've done print on demand, I've grown an e-commerce business. So I adapt the same philosophy. And even when being a buyer at TJX, it's the same thing. The customer doesn't like green, you can't have all this inventory. If it's not raining, how are you going to sell rain boots? You have to be agile, you have to flex. And to me, I adapt the same philosophy in real estate. It's like the market is constantly changing. It's so dynamic. So you have to be able to have multiple exit strategies and flex. And then a la carte your strategy to make it fit for you.
You know what?
Oh my God, love it.
Honestly, you are a businesswoman.
Oh,
Okay,
I love that.
You are a businesswoman. Honestly, you
Yeah,
could.
because coming from you guys,
You came in very humble. I mean, you came in. You're just like, okay, I've only been doing this for a short period of time. I talked to these people. Oh, I don't know anything, and then you say what you just said.
oh my
I
God.
mean, it either goes to show one or two things. One, you're really holding cards, or two,
What does it mean? How
you
hold the
don't.
cards?
Sorry, what does it mean?
Yeah.
Not showing what you've got, right?
Oh, I don't know.
Right? Just it's negotiation, right? In negotiation, you don't want to lead people that you about everything you know. You want to wait until you need to show them what you know,
Oh, okay.
right?
Yeah.
So it's either one, you're holding cards,
No,
or
I'm not good at
two,
that.
you don't know stuff, but you have enough sense to figure out where you can go to learn things, adopt things, and then you also know how to like take in what you do and piece it all together, right?
But take action.
And yeah, exactly, right? And actually, a lot of this comes from taking action, because if you didn't do these things, if you didn't know
Yeah.
these things a year ago, the reason why you know them is because you took action,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's amazing. It actually is. We get very few people who come in and they say, yeah, I don't know this many things, but this is what I've pieced together from the things that I've done. So few people come and do that. Everybody comes in with, this is my golden standard philosophy. This is what I'm doing. But you're demonstrating the actions of somebody who goes in and critically thinks. That is rare.
you.
So honestly, kudos for you. Kudos
Thank
to you for
you.
that, because that is like.
But I would say it's not, I'm going to be humble now. I would say it's not because of all me. So I do leverage people who I aspire to be. So for instance, like my partner, I was like, how do I be like you? Like, show me how to be like you. You know, I want to learn everything that you've done. And but I don't just ask. I say, this is how I can offer my value. For instance, like I will assess a situation. I would be like, okay, this is how you got me to this transaction. These are the opportunities. You know, you're so good at this area, but you're really lacking in this. I'm not lacking, but you really need to ramp up in this area. And this is where I come in to help you. Let me formulate a plan for you. I want to offer you value. In return, you would teach me. So for me, it's not about just take. It's about, let me show you how I can offer you value. And let me show you how this business can be better. So why don't we form a partnership? I'm sure, I'd love to hear about how you guys form a partnership, but like, that's how I was literally seeing, filling in the missing piece of puzzle, like where my skill sets in business can leverage his skill sets. And I'm like, you're so good at deal finding. You're so good at property management. You're so good at dealing with the tenants and the renovations, but you have no time to get back to your investors, and your service is lacking. And, it's amazing that you're getting all these deals, but who is going to, support you in these deals? 50% of the formulation missing. So then I said, I can be that person. I could be the bird's eye view, strategic, sort of like, you're so down in the nitty gritty of the projects. We don't know where we're going, how we're going to get there, and our big picture vision. And also, like, it's great to find deals, but if you don't have any investors, then your deals are good as nothing. So I saw those opportunities early on, knowing that I knew nothing about real estate, but I saw this because I was on the receiving end of being the capital partner. So then I formulated a business plan, and now I asked him to be my full-time business partner. So that's how we were able to propel and grow so fast. Another example I could give you is like seeing an opportunity and saying, okay, well, I went to dinner and I met someone who was doing arbitrage. He had like 50 units. He was doing like $500,000, in sales. I was like, how do I be like you? He's like, I'm looking for an operations manager. I'm like, I could be your operations manager. So I presented myself, and he's like, and then I just talked to him, and he's like, I'm like, based on your business, like I see an opportunity. This is how I can offer value. I can offer you my free time, but in return, you teach me everything, right? It's the same. So I pick the people that are like expert subject matters in their field. And then I see an opportunity and I say, how do we create a win-win solution? So I present my skills, and they're like, oh, that's great. You have all these skills. And then I support them. And then that's how I'm able to grow in like 3 exponential parts. So I have my Bursters in Ontario, or just Burrs. And then I have my Florida partner, who is my friend and also mortgage broker. And then recently I've sort of wanted to learn from, I would call him an arbitrage king. I just give them all names, right? Marketing names. And that's how I'm able to kind of like propel and magnified my ability to learn. And that's the kind of person I am. I just love learning.
Yeah, you're very good at influencing people. You're so good at this. How can I be like you? So now you gotta perform.
Yeah.
Right. And this person's like, oh, I'm so good at this. Now I really need to like get good at what I say I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's awesome. Who knows how?
But it's not a one side relationship. I
Yeah.
offer value too. It's not like, what can you do for me? It's like, this is how I presented, like, I can offer you because I know you need help in this area.
Yeah.
And that's how it's give and take. It's not just give it to me. It's a relationship building, right?
Yeah. No, you already identify your strength, right? And
I didn't even know that was my strength, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's a vision and the integration of the operation, right?
You mentioned being able to give and then exchange for the value that you're looking for, right? So you're trading something here. But what I think a lot of people struggle with is how to identify the value that somebody requires. Because you even illustrated there that you came in as a consumer. It's kind of like in retail. I think one of the best ways to figure out whether marketing or what the problem is with the product is to be on the consumer end, to be the person who's on the floor having to go there and consume it. And you came in as a consumer capital investor, but as a partner. So if you're looking to raise, you know what may have been the shortfalls in that relationship and what you can improve. So as a consumer, you identified it.
Exactly.
But not everybody is in a position to consume what it is that they might need to cultivate. How would you advise, since you've gone through this, somebody assess and identify value to offer somebody? It's not just in trading for knowledge or information. It's also to form partnerships. If you're going to form a partnership and say, hey, let's work together,
Yeah.
how do you identify what value you need to bring?
So I think the first and foremost is being yourself, being your authentic self. Not going in with a goal of like, I need money, I need this, I need that. It's like throw that out the window, right? When it comes to marketing, I did this with my brand, my yoga brand, where I grew my yoga brand e-commerce. Like I was able to convert customers from all over Europe, and they don't know who I am, right? So I think my recommendation would be like, don't be so set on, oh, I need to make money, I need to find a partner, I need to do, like, set that aside. What's the most important is that relationship and being your authentic self, right? Because once you start being your authentic self and being like vulnerable and genuine and offering value without asking anything in return, that's when people are forthcoming to you. And they're like, oh my God, she's so friendly. She's so real. Like that's the feedback I get from most of my followers. They're like, you're just like my best friend. Like I can relate to you. You know, you show me about the good stuff, but you show me numbers and you show me about the bad stuff and the pitfalls. You're just like a best friend. So I think that, you know, just being warm and just taking the whole, it starts with the relationship, because at the end of the day, I find that cultivating a relationship is almost like planting a seed, right? So first you plant the seed and you don't expect anything. You just genuinely be yourself. And then you slowly water the seed. And over time, the person will gain trust. You're like, oh, I love, like she's genuine. And you have to be genuine. You can't just be like, oh, opportunistic, right? So really, really be your genuine self as if like your family or your friends. And then over time, that trust is built, right? And then once people trust you, they have no money. They have no problem throwing money at you or whatever. Whatever idea you're trying to sell, it starts with the core fundamentals, which is trust and a genuine relationship, right? So that genuine relationship, like you said, you water it and the tree grows. And that's when the tree's ready, it will come to you. You don't need to go out looking. I don't believe in looking. So anything I post on social media and I'm sharing my journey, I'm genuinely doing it because I want people to know and I want people to learn. It's almost like, guys, like listen to this gospel. I want you to hear it. I want you to be able to do it too. Because look where I came from. I came from humble beginnings. Like you can do it too. So having a genuine aspiration to help others and like feeling good when you help others, like you said, when you guys feel so humble that, you know, you were able to influence me in a pivotal moment. That to me, like that's what I love. So I think it's just be yourself, and yeah, if that makes sense.
Okay, how does the social media play in this journey so far? Because you've been posting a lot. Actually, when we first talked and I started seeing you posting, I knew you're going to actually start making quite a bit of or start expanding your portfolio pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Because the way that you're posting your social media and all that stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of people have trouble doing that. So
yeah.
Can you?
So I adapted from like I said, it's from coming from a business mindset. Like I did grow my yoga brand. I didn't know what I was doing, and I knew that I had to sell to a niche market without knowing who they are on the other side of the world. So first it's like, okay, what are my competitors doing? I started mimicking them, but then I'm like, but that's so mainstream. There's no uniqueness. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna be myself. I'm not gonna try, because when I started trying and like curated my content and, you know, being so like square and just being like automated, I wasn't getting any traction. As soon as I start connecting, I'm like, hey, I'm a mom too. I have these struggles. And like, you know, these are the things that like, what do you like? Do you like leopard? Do you like pink? Like I actually talked to them. I actually asked them. And what Andrew mentioned about understanding your customers and market, it's basically the same concept. Like understanding, you always want to work market back. You don't develop a product and push it onto the customer like, hey, come buy this. And like, do all this media campaign to sell it to them. You want to understand what they need and then work market back. So I use that same philosophy. So in my yoga brand, I would say, do you like leopard? Pink is really hot. Do you like pink or do you like thing? If you buy this collection, I'll donate 10% to save like extinct pandas in China. And people really gravitated that. They're like, oh my God, like really? Like, so I would talk to my audience. I would know what they like, and then I would curate a collection catering to their needs. And they would buy it because they're like, you're speaking to me. How did you know what I want? Right? So using that same philosophy and just genuinely being myself instead of like being so automated. I didn't have a plan. It's just like free flow. And then I applied that same philosophy, just being myself. and sharing value. So when I would share information, I would look at people in the States, a lot of the real estate influencers in the States. Like I would pick the best content, and then I would just do my own version. And I would show almost like I'm your best friend. I'm unveiling secrets to you and what I'm doing, my success, my failure. And you've seen me grown from 0 to now, and you've already trusted me through this whole journey. And almost like I kind of see it like a reality show. It's like, hey, guess what's happening today? And they love it. And there's like, you're so real. A lot of people don't like to share information, but you do. And that's what they find value. And my personality too, I guess. Like, I don't know. I get really excited. So they're like, oh my God, you're my best friend.
It's interesting how many people come in and they conclude the same thing, where it's almost as if though building relationships, growing and scaling has a lot to do with just being a genuine human being, right? And people kind of undo that work because they see a lot of things and then they feel that they need to be that instead of just being yourself. And it is honestly very challenging to get over, right? When the camera turns on, everybody all of a sudden has a camera voice or like reception voice. You know, like it's almost like when people answer the phone, their voice completely changes,
True.
right?
Yeah.
And people get in their heads. It is a muscle that you have to exercise to undo something that almost clenches when the camera turns on. But I do think everybody has something to share, right? And honestly, the fact that you've been doing this for a year, you obviously have a lot of things to share. And I do think that you're even leveraging the work that you have been doing, right, prior, right, corporate work. Even when I tell people, okay, my family has a background in construction, they say, oh, well, that is a huge advantage. But there's a lot of transferable philosophies and principles to business and work from any industry, right? Like you're in retail, you're in marketing, and you're able to transfer so much, obviously, from the things you say, you're able to transfer so much into what you're currently doing. Yeah. So it's not like if you're doing any kind of work anywhere, you probably can find things that you're able to apply and cross-reference into what you're currently pursuing.
Yeah. I love what you're saying, because I remember someone telling me, it's like, you need to give yourself more credit as a new investor, because I'm like, I'm nobody. I was like, oh, why do they want me on your podcast? Really, me? So, it's like a very humble moment, right? So I'm like, what do you mean? Like, who am I? I'm nobody. But then if you actually, look back and give yourself credit, even if you're like selling bananas, like those skills are transferable, because you got to talk to customers, you got to influence them to buy the bananas before they go run. So like, I think people don't realize, like, love what you said. It's like, I remember having a conversation with my friend. They're like, you have to give yourself more credit, because you just didn't wake up and did real estate. All those skills, all those life skills that you've experienced, those are all transferable to real estate. So like, don't just think that you're starting from scratch. Yeah. Your life skills are all relevant, right? So I love what you said about that. Yeah.
Not a lot of people can connect them though.
No.
Right? So what you're doing is like stacking, but you're stacking your skill sets. So.
Yeah.
Right? Like even right now, by the way, just so you know, this podcast, I almost feel like we're taking a business lesson from you.
No,
so,
there's
so
really
awesome.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
No, it's
and
awesome.
I really appreciate it. Oh, I'm so flattered. I love it.
No, it is. And I'm thinking as we're having this conversation, because it is very genuine. And there's a lot of people who kind of come in and they don't ever want to suggest that there's something they don't know. Not everyone, but sometimes people are just more concerned with bigging themselves up rather than talking about the struggles and what they're currently doing, and not worrying about, is this a big enough deal?
Yes.
People's biggest problem is doing anything. Whatever you're doing is actually almost always significant, especially if you find your niche and especially if you find your angle. So I think it's amazing.
To add to that point, you know how like people think before they post? I don't. Literally, I would wake up, I'm like, oh my God, that's a great idea. And then my audience love it because it's impromptu and it's real.
I had a lot of concern about that before we started really doubling down on the social media, right?
Your background is an engineer, right?
Not just that, it's my accent, right? Yes,
oh.
English is my second language, right? So
you're amazing though.
I'm always concerned about that until my wife, Joy, at some point, like I'm just like, man, I really feel kind of stupid about presenting this in a webinar or something, right? And then she looked at me, she's like, so like, were you the first one? I'm like, no, I'm the third one. It's just don't worry. By the time audience are listening to the third speakers, right? They're not paying attention. Yeah, and then after,
I love that.
Yeah, after
your wife is the best.
Actually, you're right.
I love that. Yeah, so it's perception.
Like, I'm not gonna care about that. And the truth is, like, if it doesn't add enough value to other people, or people don't think that it's good enough, they're gonna forget about it.
Exactly.
Right? So just
have a strong point of view.
Just move.
Vietnamese investors in the U.S. He has like the heaviest accent, but he's memorable because that's his spin, his marketing. Get that money or something like that.
yeah.
So I'm like, see, everyone knows it because he is authentically himself, right?
Yeah.
So that's just goes to show, like, as long as you're being yourself, you don't need to fake it. You can wake up every day and just walk and be yourself.
I think that is very interesting. So I used to have this philosophy when it came to how it is you're filming, how it is you dress, how it is you speak, what it is you say. I used to think it was very it's very advantageous if you're able to lean into stereotypes. When I say stereotypes, I actually mean what people think whatever it is that you're doing is supposed to look like, right? That's why outfits are very important. This is why people wear suits. This is why people wear makeup. This is why people wear whatever, because it conforms to something in people's minds, right? And honestly, sometimes some of these stereotypes are cultural. And we all have them. You don't have to pretend. If you lean into some cultural stereotypes, people will resonate with it.
Yeah.
And they will see it as genuine. Because more often than not, these cultural stereotypes, there's a lot of them that are
everyone's
genuine.
thinking the same thing. Everyone's thinking, it's just don't want to verbally say it.
We do live in a society where like we have to, everybody's a little
Righteous.
bit sensitive to a lot of things. So we kind of try. And I find myself, in a precarious position, being half Greek and half Chinese. I'm just like, am I able to lean into any of these or lean into both? But at least maybe if I get called out, I have an excuse. I can always just say, I'm one or the other, right?
Exactly.
But I always thought that, you could always just lean into it, but these things are hard.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say, they're hard to do. We thought that genuine stuff would be challenging.
To be yourself,
Seriously.
right? It's like that should be the easiest thing.
Yeah.
Like by nature. But
Just try it. It's just like, okay, it's like...
who am I?
Yeah.
Like, who am I?
No, we used to start the conversation and be like, okay, we're just going to try to have a natural conversation. Like, what?
But the fact that you said it's natural is not going to be natural.
I know. Way to make it unnatural.
Yeah.
Who says that in a natural conversation?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, I think at some point, because he's a very spontaneous person. I need things to be planned out. And at some point, I started seeing how he travels. I'm like, I need to learn how to be spontaneous.
Yeah.
I need to plan to be spontaneous.
But that's why you guys are the perfect synergy, because you have that balance, right? You have like one yin and yang.
Yeah.
I think that's why it works, because you can't have two of the same. You're never going to get anything done.
For sure.
Unique complement. This is also when people find partnerships. You want to find somebody who's not the same as you. So if you find somebody who's able to reel you in or bring something different to the table, and you've obviously done a great job of that. I think you're able to go pretty far. I do think it's funny because there's things that I can hear when you're talking about it. You know how many people have at some point kind of alluded to, like, I'm going to say this a certain way, there's a little gangster in them, right? Like, and it's just something that gives you...
That's me. Like, if I can be my authentic self, like, I sometimes the hood will come out because I grew up in Jane and Finch. So I'm going to be like, I'm like, yo, bro, what's up? And then people are like, what? You're supposed to be... I'm like, I don't care. So for me, it's like, I try to care less about what people think of me. Sometimes I do care, obviously, but like, certain things, I'm like, I'm just gonna be myself.
The way that you are, I can see that your brain works pretty fast, and you probably have a pretty big vision. Okay, so
always.
I think the question here is, as you were trying to like get into real estate, as you're trying to like scale up your business, right? And also with the previous experience that you're working in a big like corporate world, there's a KPI right in place. Do you have your own KPI where you're like, okay, by this time I need to hit X amount of let's say revenue, or let's say X amount of doors, right? This and that. And how do you balance that between your current life? Because you got a daughter. Well, I just like my 1-year-old is taking a lot of my time.
Oh yeah.
Right, over the weekends and all that stuff, right? And sometimes I would get into the mindset of, okay, I really want to achieve that goal, but I need to really balance out how I can actually achieve that. Do I need to add more people? Do I need to... All of a sudden it creates a bit of anxiety. So how do you overcome that?
I wish I could do a better job at that, but I feel like I'm not there. So for me is like, I'll have a rough number in my mind. I'm like, okay, I'll just have 10 properties, something like that, 10 doors, 10 properties at the end of this year or whatever it is. Or I'll need to get X amount of units. Like I have my metrics when it comes to like my specific short-term rental, but essentially it's like, how do I replace my full-time income? So where am I now? What is my net profit? Like I do all the bookkeeping and the accounting too. It's like super tedious, but like it's not so clear. I think that's the biggest challenge of new investors is that like you can just be sprinting, but do you know where you're going, right? So I think that is the biggest challenge for new investors. Even myself, I have to admit, like that's somewhere an area that I can do better. So right now I'm sort of like, I wouldn't say aimlessly, but I every day I'm making moves and I'm moving the needle with all the tasks I'm doing to reach my goal. But if you're asking me about like the bigger picture end goal, it's not that clear.
I see.
You know, I know what number I need to get to replace my full-time job to be financially comfortable. But do I really want to replace my full-time job when I want to utilize my T4 to max out my borrowing capacity? So yeah, so that's the opportunity. Like, I know you guys have a coaching program, but I think this is like the part where people struggle. And I have to admit, like, I do struggle with that part.
By the way, and that's not a bad thing, because a lot of people sometimes focus way too much on the step 10, 15, 20, right? And they completely forget or neglect the next 3 steps that they need to actually accomplish. But you focus on so much on moving forward every single day, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's a small progress, but those small progress compounds over time.
Yes.
Having the goal of freeing yourself or having the, it's not so much freeing yourself, at least having the choice to work or to not when it comes to a 9-to-5 job is I don't want to say it's an easy goal to achieve, but it's an easy goal to have. A lot of people want that at some point, right? And that usually comes from some kind of stress. It's easy to set a goal that I want to remove the stress of needing to go to work or relying on my work, right? That's an easy stress to set a goal to remove. Having the problem of needing to elevate your goal beyond that, that's a good problem. It's a hard problem for a lot of people to solve because, you know, needing to work to survive, to eat food. Easy problem, easy goal to have, easy problem to solve. Having to make savings for retirement, a lot of people do that goal as well. But having to give yourself a goal that now is more self-actualizing on, let's say, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like if we're getting technical, right? Like it's just, there comes a point where you have family, you have stability, you have a roof over your head, you have food, all this stuff. Now you're going into higher means. And when people are in survival mode for so long, it's a serious switch in the way you think.
Yeah.
To elevate to a higher goal, higher purpose. You know, I want to do greater things. I want to influence the world, let's say, right? Or my community, whatever it might be. That becomes more challenging, but that's a good thing to have. But people need to understand it's difficult to help others if you cannot help yourself and those closest to you. Having the goals to do that as like a first step, that is the right goal. I think your story is going to be an inspiration to a lot of people. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
I would say like Instagram, social media.
Yeah.
You know.
What's your handle?
What I don't even know. Empower_investments.
Okay, perfect.
Empower her. Yeah.
And in case anybody's wondering about the spelling, we're going to have some info about her in the description below. So
Yeah.
honestly, it was really great having you on the show.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm so humbled to be here.